For breaking news, go to iDiskiTimes.co.za.
iDiskiTV powered by World Sports Betting. Royal AM Neil Ikanda. Why are you laughing? Orlando Pirates 4.
Trolling Mom Kiza.
Yeah, she's probably gonna be like, this boy won't try.
Yeah.
What did you make of the game, sir?
Yeah, man. Junior Kanye is not here. He's got a tournament, the top 8 tournament. So he'll be back with Tso and Justice. On Wednesday, it's Workers' Day, it's a public holiday at 3 p.m. It was a very good performance by Orlando Pirates, Justice. It was a little bit awkward at the beginning of the game until the penalty moment. And then Royal AM now, Selvin George got a free kick on the D-line because of a mistake that was done by Ubuteleze trying to clear the ball. He stepped over the line. So at halftime, it was 1-0, and you just kind of thought that, okay, maybe we have a game in our hands. But in the second half, Orlando Pirates came out guns blazing. They proved their worth as a big team. And it's a huge concern for Royal AM, if I'm being honest. I think, and I always say this, that in South Africa, there's always someone who's doing worse than you. South African Football League is actually not a good league. It's got a lot of low-quality teams. The only reason why teams don't get relegated is because there's always someone who's doing worse than you. And it's almost like a mafia or a cartel, the way that it's designed. There are 16 teams, but only one team gets relegated. In other countries, if there are 16 teams, maybe 2 teams definitely get relegated. And if there are 18 teams, 3 teams definitely get relegated. So it's only one team in South Africa that gets relegated, because in South Africa and many other leagues as well, the clubs design their own rules. So that's why it's like a closed shop cartel. So yes, of course, if you're number 15, you have to go and play the playoffs. But there are a lot of teams in South African football, and this speaks to the quality of football that we get to see and the quality of matches. There are a lot of teams who should be relegated every season, but they come back and they survive. Swallows is having a horrible season. In December, they couldn't play 2 matches against Golden Arrows and Mamelodi Sundowns, but they will survive because someone else is doing worse than them. They're having a horrible season by all accounts. We know what has happened. They have had to let go of players, and there's been money problems, but there's always someone who's doing worse than them. Nomam Keys and I, they have players that we don't really know, we're not familiar with, a lot of young players, because they can't sign new players, and maybe whatever is happening financially, we can see they're not doing well at the moment. They're going through a very difficult period. But the punishment in football is always that if you are not doing well, you will be relegated. You can go and learn your lesson below, in the lower leagues. But because of how the South African football is designed, the teams, they get to survive and they stay longer. And that's why we see mediocre football every season. These teams are mediocre every season because of that, because they have designed rules for themselves that protect themselves at the expense of the lower league teams. So, for example, teams like Itags, Pretoria University, teams like Magesi that are in the NFD and the Motsepe Foundation Championship, they're number 1, number 2, number 3, but only number 1 from there is guaranteed to go up. And then number 2 and number 3 is going to have to fight against number 15 from the top division, which is the Premiership. And number 15 is usually stronger than those ones down there because they have slightly more money, more experienced players as well. So that's a difficult one. But of course, that has nothing to do with Orlando Pirates. It was a good game for Orlando Pirates.
Sorry, before we go to Orlando Pirates, looking at the teams down there, Richards Bay, Royal AM, what do you think is the problem? Is it a money problem or is it a talent problem?
That's a very good question, Justin, because part of it is always going to be the financial problem, because when you have money, you can buy better players. But part of it as well is a lot of the owners in the Premier Soccer League are people who happen to have money. So if you look at all of them, their profile, you can start from the top until down. Long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, you could have 16 or 18 teams in South Africa, and you could say 7 owners have played football, or maybe 9 owners have played football. But recently, in the last 5 years, it's only Kaizer Motaung who's played, and many of the other owners have not played before. The playing part is very important. Just because you're a good player doesn't mean you're going to be a good president of your club. But at least you have an idea of, okay, my club needs 30 players. This is what players need and stuff like that. For the most part, the clubs are being owned by people who've never really played football. Not that that guarantees you to be successful. I need to make that very clear. It's just that sometimes the decisions that people make. So, for example, Richards Bay, they hired a guy called Caetano Tembo. Now, you can't judge anyone until you watch football matches. We watched Caetano Tembo at SuperSport United as iDiskiTV, and we would have covered his matches. And we knew that's a wrong decision. We knew it from the beginning. And even now, in Zimbabwe, they're asking Kaitano Tembo, they're talking about Kaitano Tembo to be the national team as a coach. And I'm like, that's a wrong decision.
Yeah.
And it's not personal, it's based on, I saw your teams and I watch your teams play and I know that you're not a good enough coach. So they don't know that because they are rich people. Some of them are rich people that don't have time to watch football. It is very important to be embedded in football. Sit down and watch. If you can't watch yourself, you can then hire people who watch football so that they can make decisions. Because the talent part, so there's the money part and the talent part. The talent part relies on people being able to spot players for you. They must see those players for you. But there is another side to football because football is an industry and it's a multi-billion industry. There's another side to it where people make phone calls to say, I have this player.
Yeah.
The person making that phone call is going to make 10% from that deal,
Yeah.
15% and 20% from that deal. And it's not necessarily that the player is a good option for the club.
Yeah.
It's not the player that they need. It's a player that the agent wants to sell to the club. So many different layers to it. But the reason why, part of the reason why, is the money part and the wrong people being hired in the wrong positions because they don't understand the sport itself.
Yeah.
But Orlando Pirates, today, they deserve it. I don't want to make it too much about anything else other than Orlando Pirates deserve it. It was an easy win for them, and they deserve to win. And it also, if you think about the fact that they're number 3 and then Stellenbosch is number 2, it makes it that I said it maybe a month ago that it's going to be an interesting fight for number 2 in South African football because anyone can be number 2. But at that point, Sikukuna could have been number 2. Any other person, I think Cape Town City was also there as well. But it looks like it's going to be a race between the Orlando Pirates and Royal AM. And the importance of a number 2, of course, is that whoever becomes number 2 is going to be the second team after Sundowns to go and represent South Africa in the CAF Champions League. So it's going to be an interesting race because there's that 3-point gap between Orlando Pirates and Stellenbosch. And there's only 5 matches left as well.
We're coming to an end of the season. There's a huge debate here. Who do you think is player of the season?
It's a very difficult one. I don't know who's going to be player of the season. Even if I can come up with a name, I will still not be convinced. So Maswanganyi is being mentioned. Of course, part of the advantage of playing for a big team is that you have a fan base behind you and they will always push you. And in days where you don't deserve to be a man of the match, you can be a man of the match. Today he deserves it, kind of because he has assists and goals. But you could look at it and say, forensically, and say other people had more impact, but he kind of deserves it. But there are days where I watch it and see that he gets man of the matches that he doesn't deserve. But he's going to definitely be in the conversation. When it's a season like this, you always have to go to the top goal scorers because no one was outstanding. Different players were playing at different moments. Like in February, March, there was someone who was shining in their own little way. In December, November, there was someone else who was shining in their own little way. So there's a guy who plays for Stellenbosch. Last night, I watched him against Polokwane City. He scored 5 goals in one game. Ikram Reinas, that was a fantastic performance. I was so glad to watch it. Now, if he scores over 15 goals, it's definitely going to be a top goal scorer. So he needs 2 more goals to be on 15 goals. Now, if he approaches 20 goals with the 5 matches that are left, then you put him in that conversation. Not because he's a good player. He has a problem with trapping the ball. He has a problem finding his teammates when they're in space. He does find them sometimes, but most of the time, he opts to shoot when he doesn't have to. And that's why maybe he's the top goal scorer because he takes opportunities and sometimes he misses those opportunities. If he gets closer to that, it will be him. I will never endorse a goalkeeper being player of the season. But here's what I want to say, just before we close the video. Mofokeng is the king of Ama 2000. Mofokeng inkosi Ama 2000. Mofokeng, we saw him bekangu Ratomo last year. Igama lakhe nefani yakhe ibingu Ratomo, Relebohile Ratomo, and then he evolved into becoming Mofokeng. I think it's his father's surname, and ever since the beginning of the season, he's been head and shoulders above most of the young players. To be a young player of the season in South Africa, you have to be 23 years old and under. Right? There's a guy named Ojuna Polis. He played last night for Polokwane City. He was at the AFCON with Bafana Bafana. There's a guy called Shandre Campbell. He played last night when we watched SuperSport United and Kaizer Chiefs as well. It is those one, Mofokeng, Apolis, Shandre Campbell. Devin Titus, I think, is 23 or is going to be 24 by the end of the season. So I don't know if he qualifies. So out of those 3, for me, I've put their names across as the nominees: Mofokeng, and the players I've just mentioned now. Those are going to be the 3 nominees for player of the season. And I think that Mofokeng Mofokeng, Campbell, Apolis, those are going to be the 3 players. And I think Mofokeng has proven he doesn't even have to score or assist. The way that he finds himself free in space, his creativity, it says to me that he should be the young player of the season. And he should be the image of the next star in South African football. That's going to be, he's the king of AMA 2000, and he's going to be the next generation star of South African football. In fact, we would be happy or better off if he leaves South Africa, because there's trappings in South Africa. You step on top of the ball, you are heralded as a hero. If you go to Europe, they might find a better way to coach you, to say it's all about scoring goals, and he's scoring them. He scored even today as well. So Mofokeng is the young player of the season for me, and he's the king of AMA 2000. Definitely, I would put my neck on the line and say that's my young player of the season. Player of the season, I don't know who's going to be the player of the season. And because I have not put a name forward, I don't have the right to debate. Whoever they give it to, I'm going to be like, okay, there was no obvious one. Unless there's blatant cheating, they will pick someone because it's a fan favorite. Then I will say that was cheating. But whoever they pick, from the top goal scorer, from Abu Mukwena, Ronwen Williams, Ikram Reyners, it will be like, okay, they deserve it, but there's no outstanding player of the season.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Nkewu. Royal AM 0, London Pirates 4, with myself, Justice Shabalala, and Nkululeko, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for watching us.